Watch out, here comes Mant. Matinee is a 1990s film, directed by Joe Dante, also known for films such as Gremlins and Twilight Zone the movie. The film stars John Goodman, famous for a great many things, including the TV series Roseanne and the classic film The Big Lebowski. He plays the part of Lawrence Woolsey, a shock and horror filmmaker who enters a small town at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis. The period is the 1950s, when tensions were running high between the United States and the USSR over nuclear missiles the Soviets had placed in Cuba, and which threatened all-out nuclear war. The film uses this setting as the focal point of Woolsey's attempts to mix this fear of Armageddon with his horror film about a man who, through nuclear radiation, becomes merged with a fly. This mimics the film The Fly, although clearly the 1950s Vincent Price version, rather than the more over-the-top Cronenberg version starring Jeff Goldblum. Although Matinee is very clearly a light-hearted spoof on these films, it is also very obviously an homage to the early period when such science fiction and horror films were all the rage, proven by frequent flashes of period movie posters of the time, such as Day of the Triffids and The Day the Earth Caught Fire. This gives it both an authentic air, but also an interesting look at the nature of the films and their at times inherent silliness, which was always part of their charm, in that they never took themselves seriously. Goodman as Woolsey is really good value for the part, as he always buys into everything he does in the film. Films from the 50s were always pronounced as being in Technicolor, or super widescreen, or CinemaScope, or Cinerama. In this instance, it's called Atomovision. The cinema manager, who is having to deal with all of this, is none other than Robert Picardo, who became very well known for his role in the Star Trek series Voyager as the holographic Doctor. The focus is also on two boys, whose father served in the US Navy amidst the missile crisis. They have a love for all things horror, and the older of the two ends up working with Woolsey. All the while this is going on, the crisis continues in the background, being ramped up with clips of John F. Kennedy's speeches. There is a constant mix of humour in the film, such as when a gas station attendant says,
"Thanks, Mr. Hitchcock."
This allows the audience to enjoy the mixed tension, much like any good horror film would, with elements of humour to balance things out emotionally. At the time, safety warnings would suggest everyone finds a safe space and duck down for cover, which again here adds to the comical nature of it all. Mix in with this are army scenes on a nearby beach as the military prepares for all-out nuclear war. How that would work out by being on a beach near a potential blast is hard to say, but it looks good. Woolsey uses every trick in the book to garner attention for his upcoming film, using old stalwart Dick Miller in a role designed to make the film seem an affront to the dignity of society. It is a heady mix of salesmanship and filmmaking, encouraging the audience to really get emotionally involved in it all. The scene with Woolsey discussing where filmmaking originated from is exceptional, and Goodman really gets into crafting a sense of love and joy in film, which you get the feeling is missing in today's so-called movies. Once the film kicks off, a horror science fiction crossover, Woolsey has his assistant/girlfriend dress as a nurse and make people sign a waiver, saying they're not liable if anyone dies from being terrified. Throughout the performance, every trick possible is used to engage the audience, from shock buzzers to massive sound effects. And you can really imagine what it must be like to be a part of something like this, which isn't far from a modern experience, watching something like Minecraft the movie, with the chicken jockey reactions.
Chicken jockey!
The audience erupts into calls for Mant, and all of the plans work out, creating a special event and the prime moment in the film. The humour continues throughout this with scenes with the General, played brilliantly by Kevin McCarthy, who starred in the original 1950s Invasion of the Body Snatchers. As he says,
What in creation do you call that thing?
Bill.
which is absurdly funny. This mixture of mayhem, fun and craziness drives the film within the film on, and culminates in a movie which is both a wonderful homage to the shock films of the 1950s, as well as supposed everyday life in America. It is fun to watch, really shares its love of all things film, and is a very enjoyable ride. I am more than happy to recommend you dig out a chance to see Matinee. But watch out for Mant.